after years of radio and television, we grew to know actor Clayton Moore as the Lone Ranger. Their identities became inseparable. Now, some corporate endeavor called Lone Ranger Television is attempting to relegate Clayton Moore to some desolate obscurity where there is no need for a man in a white hat. That corporation has taken legal action to prohibit Moore from making personal appearances in his mask and Lone Ranger costume. We think that corporation is wearing a black hat, and the hat is over its ears and its eyes, but unfortunately not over its mouth. Clayton Moore is the Lone Ranger, and after all those days of fighting for law and order in the early West, he should be allowed to wear his mask where he pleases. And those corporate bean counters should step aside in favor of some good nostalgia.
Hello, is this Clayton Moore?
Who's this?
Ken Behrens calling.
Ken, how are you?
We're on the air in Bloomington, and I'm doing fine.
Very good.
How are you?
Well, real busy. The phone has just been ringing off the hook.
I understand that, and I've seen your picture in our local paper here lately, and also understand that you've had some network news coverage lately. I really wanted to find out what was going on.
Well, let me sort of review what's happened. Lone Ranger Incorporated, the Rather Corporation, is trying to stop me from going out on public appearances. Now, I go out on public appearances as Clayton Moore, who portrayed the Lone Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing the Lone Ranger for 30 years. They don't want me to wear the mask, the costume. However, I do wear a frontier costume, and I do wear the mask, because the mask has been associated with Clayton Moore, who portrayed the Lone Ranger for 30 years. And my fans, God bless them, want to see me, and I'm certainly going to continue going out on personal appearance tours.
You know, this came up yesterday on one of the talk shows, yesterday afternoon, the whole business of the Lone Ranger. And I understand there's a new motion picture that's going to be made, and this is probably what brought this all about.
Yes, this is true. They don't want two Lone Rangers out on the road, but I'm on television all over the country on Saturdays and Sundays, and I've been on TV for 30 years, and I'm certainly not going to stop going out on personal appearance tour.
I don't blame you a bit. I think, if I think of the Lone Ranger, in fact, I think you should have the role in the motion picture, too.
Well, I'm not fighting for that, Ken. Possibly, I'm quite sure they would like a younger Lone Ranger, and this is perfectly all right with me, and I hope the man that does the Lone Ranger character on the new motion picture lives up to the morals and the standards and the character that I have of the Lone Ranger for the past 30 years. I wish this gentleman a great deal of luck, but my fight is the right to make a living and to go out on personal appearance tour as Clayton Moore, who portrayed the Lone Ranger, and wear the mask. Now, the mask is not new to my face, because in the early 40s, before I did the Lone Ranger, I wore a mask on my face in a motion picture at Republic Studios called The Ghost of Zorro.
I think a lot of folks probably can remember that. In fact, correct me if I got the title wrong, but you were known as King of the Cereals for a while, weren't you?
I was King of the Cereals at Republic Studios, the studio that John Wayne came out of. God rest his soul.
Has this ever happened before? I don't know. You get all of this complicated business of contracts and what you sign and what you don't sign and all this kind of thing.
Well, 5 years ago, they thought they were going to start a motion picture of the Lone Ranger at that time. And they called me in and said, that's it, we don't want you to play the Lone Ranger anymore. We don't want you to go out on tour. And my manager and myself, we said to the Rather Corporation, I have been playing the Lone Ranger for 30 years, so I will go out, not as the Lone Ranger, but as Clayton Moore, who portrayed the Lone Ranger. And I have been doing that since that time.
Mm-hmm. I know. I've read about you. You've gone all around the country. And, in fact, you had some guns stolen at one time, I think.
Yes, in Chicago.
Made some news, and obviously the Windy City, which I wasn't happy to hear about.
But my fans are really standing behind me. From what I understand from different radio stations and TV stations, they are starting petitions and they're sending letters in, and I sure thank my many fans that have put me where I am. And those I have in Bloomington and all this great state of Illinois, I certainly thank you very, very much.
Clayton, let me just tell you what happened on Problems and Solutions yesterday, which was a talk show. Somebody called in and said, what would be wrong with picking up the Lone Ranger where they left off and having you play it, obviously? You know, there's a trend in the country and probably the world to forget people when they get older. And I think that's sad, because I think it would be interesting, and in the fact that, well, one of the arguments was, well, youngsters who haven't known the Lone Ranger won't know the difference. But for all of them who see on television, I think the reruns are probably being more circulated now than they were when they were first done.
Well, Ken, you see, you know, I'm in syndication every Saturday and Sunday all over the country, every city, all over the United States. So the youngster today, he knows Clayton Moore.
He would associate the Lone Ranger with you.
Certainly.
Sure.
And the thing is that we have lost our heroes, and the youngster of today, they need a hero to worship. I had my hero, you had yours, and I hope yours was the Lone Ranger, Ken.
You betcha.
So Tom Mix was mine, William S. Hart, George O'Brien, Ken Maynard. These fellows were my heroes when I was a youngster.
You know, and really, I think you mentioned John Wayne. John Wayne became, I think, more appealing to people. I don't know if appealing is the word I'm looking for there, but as he got older, that gave him even better quality.
Well, John Wayne, the Duke, he represented America. Fine, fine man. I thought very, very much of him, and of course, deeply hurt when he passed on. But he left us with a great heritage.
I really think that
representative of our country.
Yeah, I really think that people would like to see you. Obviously, when you go out and do these personal appearances, you get many people that turn out, don't you?
Oh, sure do. And I'll tell you one thing, I'm in a good fight, and I've gone through 3 generations, and I will not let my fans down. I'm going to fight for that which is right, and I know it's right, that I have been doing the Lone Ranger. It is the truth for 30 years.
I can recall that, and you really just sort of fit the bill for the Lone Ranger.
Well, I started in 1949, and we stopped shooting the Lone Ranger shows in 1956.
Clayton, I don't know how busy you are. I know you're busy with all sorts of phones.
You'd be surprised.
But would you mind if we open the phone lines up just for a couple of comments from people?
Oh, sure. I'd love to talk to people in Bloomington.
All right, 829-2345 is our number, or 1-800-322-9377 if you're calling on the watch line. And we'll get back to our phone lines and our conversation with Clayton Moore in just a second. Go ahead, you're on the air.
Hello. Am I speaking to the Lone Ranger?
Yes, ma'am. Good
Oh,
morning.
golly, this is great. I can't believe it. I watched you for so many years, and now my children are watching you.
Well, that's very nice, and it's nice to hear your voice.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're pursuing what you're doing, because I think it would be fun to see you again.
Thank you kindly.
Listen, I wanted to ask you a question.
Yes,
Is your friend Tonto, Jay Silverheels, is he going along with you on this?
Well, Jay Tonto was sick. He had a stroke about 2 years ago. He's doing very well. He's come out of it nicely, and he's not as strong as he should be. I'm sure that he is with me in thought and is fighting for me just as hard as I'm fighting for all my fans.
Well, I hope to see you, and no one ever got to thank you. You know, that the last thing was I always forgot to thank that man who wore the black mask. Well, I'm thanking you for all the Saturday mornings that I watched you.
Well, thank you, and say hello to your youngsters for me.
Oh, I will. Michael will not believe that I talked to you this morning.
Well, tell your little fellas to be my kemosabi's.
Thank you, and you have a nice day.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for calling. You're on the air with Clayton Moore. Hello?
Good morning.
Somebody's maybe a little shy here to speak up.
Can I speak to the Lone Ranger?
You got him. Go ahead.
I'm only 8 years old, and I watch this show every Sunday morning. I love you.
Well, thank you, and I love you too very much.
Thank you for calling. How about you? Do you want to ask the Lone Ranger a question here?
Yes, there's only one Lone Ranger. And is there anything we could do? Where can we write letters to?
You know, I'm glad you brought that up. I think there is something we can do, and I don't know if I have Clayton Moore's approval on this or not, but I've come up with an idea, Clayton.
What's that, Ken?
If people wrote this Rather Corporation, could they do anything at all to help you?
Well, I'll say this, that if they did, I certainly would appreciate anything that my fans can do for me.
Okay, I'll pass an address along here, sir. Are you still there?
Yeah.
It's the Rather Corporation, and I can repeat this when we get done talking with Clayton Moore. You can write the Rather Corporation, the Lone Ranger Incorporated, at 270 North Cannon Drive. That's C-A-N-O-N Drive, and I will repeat this because I'm going through it rather quickly now. Beverly Hills, California, 90210. And if you'd like to see Clayton Moore have the rights to go ahead and go out and appear as the Lone Ranger in personal appearances, if you'd put that in the form of a letter, I'm sure that could help sway some opinion here.
Yes, because there's only one Lone Ranger. Thank
you very kindly, sir, and I deeply appreciate talking to you, and let me just say this, that I won't let you fans down. You put me where I am today, and I'm going to fight a good fight for all my fans and for myself, Clayton Moore, who portrayed the Lone Ranger.
Wait till my son finds out I talked to you.
Thank you, sir.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Do you have a comment for Clayton Moore, please?
Yeah, you tell the Lone Ranger I love him, too, because I used to watch him a lot. And I'm 65, and I think he's still got the right to be the Lone Ranger.
Maybe you ought to send a letter, if you would.
Where do you send it?
Well, I'll repeat that address again, okay?
Wait until I get pencil, okay.
Well, I'll do it when we get through talking here, ma'am. Okay.
Thank you very kindly, ma'am. And
I'm 65 and I sympathize with you, but you were great. I used to watch your shows a long time ago.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling. Do you have a comment?
Yes, I'd just like to say that I've been a fan of the Lone Ranger ever since I was quite young. I have no children, but I still watch him every chance I get. And as far as I'm concerned, Clayton Moore is the only Lone Ranger. I'm even disappointed in the series when they have a substitute because it's so obvious he's not the right guy. And I really enjoy him, and I hope he wins this battle.
Thank you very kindly. You were a little difficult for me to hear because of the connection, but I appreciate your very kind thoughts, and I promise you I will not let my fans down.
Well, you've always been my hero, and you always will be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, there's an interesting story that goes way, way back with you, Clayton. You made it to Bloomington when you were doing some circus acts, weren't you?
Yes, many years ago when I was a younger fellow, that I was in Bloomington, and I practiced on the trapeze in the Ward Barn.
That was the one?
Flying Wards.
That's the one that was on Emerson, if I'm not mistaken, Emerson Street.
Yeah, I don't remember, so many years ago. But at that time, it was the Ward's Barn, and Victor Fleming, the Flying Flemings, were practicing there. So many of the different trapeze acts. A little difficult right now to remember some of their names, but Bert Dawes, I believe Bert Dawes was there, and Pappy Fisher, the Flying Fishers.
Mm-hmm. You know, that's the other thing. You really keep yourself in shape, too. The picture that I saw in our local paper shows that you're no slouch. You're in good shape. You could handle a role like this today, even for the motion picture, I'm sure.
I'm 10 pounds lighter now than I was when I did the Lone Ranger. And my waist is 34. I still wear a 44 coat.
You're a big man.
I swim a couple miles every day. I jog and live a good, healthy, clean life.
Let me take a couple of more phone calls, Clayton, before I let you go, okay?
Sure, Ken.
You're on the air with the Lone Ranger.
Yeah, hi.
Good morning.
Is there any way that we can get any, if we're not able to see where you are now, is there any way we can get any pictures or autographs so you add to my collection?
Boy, that is a problem, and I'll tell you, Clayton not only faces it, but a lot of other people do. It just gets so expensive to send out pictures, doesn't it, Clayton?
We always...
I think if they wrote to, as you said, Ken, yesterday, to write, I guess, Rather Corporation.
Maybe they could get them out to you.
Well, we always enjoyed the programs, and I hope we can get them back on the radio more often and more on the air, on television.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Bye-bye. Nice talking to you.
Sure.
Out on personal appearance tour someday, I'd like to just ride into the great state of Illinois, Bloomington, and say hello to you folks.
We have a ton of people that want to talk with you, Clayton. I know we can't go forever. You're on the air.
Say, we always watch the Lone Ranger every weekend, and when this other guy, I don't know what his name was, come on, I just didn't like him. I didn't like his voice, the Lone Ranger's voice. There was just something about his voice that made him seem so powerful.
Who would you be referring to by the other guy?
Well, sir, I can explain that to you. The other gentleman's name was John Hart, a very nice fellow and a good friend of mine. I made 78 TV shows, and I asked for more money and a little better treatment from the Lone Ranger company. They didn't want to give it to me, so I told them to get another Lone Ranger. And they did, and they got John Hart, and he made 52 pictures. However, the fans, you people, demanded me back. You wrote letters. It went all the way across the country, I know, Illinois and all through there, and they asked me to come back as a Lone Ranger. I did. I've been doing the Lone Ranger ever since, and I certainly appreciate all the letters that came in many years ago to put me back on television as Clayton Moore, who portrayed the Lone Ranger. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you for calling, sir.
Alrighty.
Clayton, this is really none of my business. Maybe you don't have to answer it, but I know in many, many cases, people who sign contracts don't really wind up getting paid for all of the times that they're seen. Now, I don't know how the television rights and all that kind of thing work for you, but basically what we're talking about here is your right to go out and keep the fans happy about you being the Lone Ranger and doing the personal appearance things, and also just to obviously help support your family, right? Because we are talking some money here when you go out and do personal appearances. And if that right is taken away from you, then obviously that income is lost.
That's correct. That's exactly what I'm fighting for, the right to go on personal appearance tours. The thing is, Ken, that I do have, as we know and my fans have said, I do have a distinctive voice. Mm-hmm. And the producers, naturally, if I were to go on the screen in another picture, maybe doing something serious or something, the people would yell, "Hey, hi-yo, Silver, there he is." And the producer wouldn't stand still for this. Mm-hmm. The same thing that happened to George Reeves, who did Superman. When George was doing a love scene, they would yell, what is the saying that they said for Superman? Up in the sky.
Yeah, it's a bird, it's a plane, that whole thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So the producer never would hire George Reeves, and the same thing has happened with me. So I do not do pictures anymore. However, I go out on personal appearance tour, and this is the way that I support my family and make a living.
Sure. If people want to write again, I want to repeat this address. Clayton, I'll let you go because we have to do a newscast here.
Fine, Ken, and before you do, may I say goodbye to your listening audience over WJBC in Bloomington, Illinois. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you very, very much for your wonderful support, and I promise you, Clayton Moore will not let you down.
Okay.
Adios.
All right. If you want to write and help out this whole business, write the Rather Corporation. That's WRATHER CORP, of course, Corporation. Lone Ranger Incorporated, 270 North Cannon, CANON Drive, Beverly Hills, California, 90210. And again, our thanks to Clayton Moore for having him on the program. It is 11:30 and 71 degrees.